Welcome to the Divorce Angel podcast, and thank you for joining us. Get ready to uncover the strategies everyone can implement for a successful separation and divorce. This will save you valuable time, money and emotions while learning the secrets to your happily ever after. And now your host, my wife, Tanya Somerton.
Hello and welcome back. I'm so excited to be here. I can't believe that this is our very first episode, and over social media, I've posted that I'm going to start this podcast, and the feedback and support has been so wonderful. So I'm so grateful for everyone that has sent kind words and messages and text messages wishing me luck. So let's get into it. So today's our very first episode, and what I wanted to talk about is a question that I got asked in my Facebook group. So for those of you who don't know, I have a Divorce Angel Facebook group where we have all females in there at the moment who are all going through different stages of divorce. And one of my lovely, lovely members asked a question, and that was, when is the right time to leave her marriage? So, to be honest, it's such a difficult question. Because it's a life-changing and scary topic. It's not something that we just decide overnight. It's normally something that we've been dealing with for years. And the researchers say that the person that is choosing to leave the relationship has normally thought about it for up to 2 years before they've actually taken the steps to go, right, now it is actually time to leave. What do I need to do to put in place so I can physically have the conversation and get things in motion so we can finalise our relationship or start to finalise our relationship? So it's not something that just occurs one day you wake up and you go, I've had enough, I'm out of here. Obviously, in this member of my Facebook group, she's been contemplating this issue for some time, because I can see just by her asking it, she's been struggling with it, for some period. And there's never a right time. Some people, if you talk to them, will say, oh, I wish I'd left years earlier. It took me too long to leave. Others have regrets and say, I really should have given it more of a chance, because the grass is not greener on the other side. It takes a lot of courage to leave. It takes quite a bit of time to get your life back up and running again. Research shows up to 5 years, especially financially, for you to get back up and running again after you've been through a divorce. So it's not something that a decision that you should take lightly. So for me, I'd struggled with the decision for years. And if you read my book, The Jelly Bean Jar, which we will talk about in a later episode, it was evident to me that my relationship was over. I had fallen out of love with my husband for a period of time, but I just didn't have the courage to leave. And the reason for that was I didn't want to let anyone down. I'd considered, the ramifications to my children and what that meant. And not just that, my husband, or my ex-husband at the time, he was a nice guy. I did not want him to be hurt, and I was very careful with how we discussed it and I tackled it, because I really did care about him. One day we are going to leave that person. It just doesn't enter our mind. We marry someone because we have these hopes and dreams and aspirations that it will last forever. So to say to someone that I don't love you anymore, that this is over and I'm leaving, those three statements can be life-changing to the person that you're discussing this with. So, it's not something that anyone does without a whole lot of soul searching and thinking about the consequences of the decision. So there's a few different ways that we make decisions as humans. The way I best like to describe it is the left and right brain thinking analogy. If we dive into it a little bit deeper, what happens is people who think with their left side are more often, they're goal-orientated people. They're normally well organised. They're probably very analytical. They are very very rarely absent-minded. They're more rational, logical, precise, probably more realistic, and I think probably the best way to describe them, they really like to plan. So those sorts of roles would be doctors, lawyers, financial advisors, people that really need to be quite across everything and very particular. Then there's the right side thinkers. Now, the right side thinkers are more, let's call them the woo-woo-y sort of people. They're the people that are, they're impulsive. They can be quite emotional, yet they're creative and quite artistic, can be very intuitive as well, or they could sort of say that they're a touch psychic. They love sound and dance. So, we've probably all got people in our lives that when I talk about this, you go straight away, wow, yes, such and such is a left side thinker and such is a right side thinker. Now, I've got 3 children, and straight away I know that I've got one that's a right side thinker and one that's a left side thinker. But even myself, I consider myself a little bit of a mixture of both. But I believe in a universe, and I think that there is a higher power. And I think that I do read my star signs, and I believe in some of that sort of stuff to my husband's disdain. But I'm also a planner. I also like to think logically, and I am very thorough in a lot of that I do. So, and I think that probably my middle son is a little bit like that as well. So I do think that there can be a mixture of both. But the reason I wanted to discuss these 2 different sides of the brain and how we come to making our decisions is because when you know which side of the brain you actually think with, it can help you to understand why it is taking you as long as it is to come up with an answer, or be able to look at the situation in front of you and understand the consequences of it. So, for instance, if I was a left side thinker and I wanted to leave my marriage, I would be sitting there and I would probably plan it down to a T. I would have which one of us was going to move out, how I would afford to do it, where I would live, what would happen with the children, who's going to have the furniture, all those sorts of things. So the couples that I have worked with that are left side thinkers often are the most amazing people to work with because they are right into facts and figures. They'll sit there, they'll have a spreadsheet, and they'll work it out with such and such is going to have this much money, such and such is going to have that, we're going to have this car, that car, then I'm going to transfer this amount of money into a bank account, done. If you get 2 people that are left side thinkers, you can get something done really, really quickly. Now, if you've got a left side thinker and a right side thinker and you throw them into the mix, normally what will happen is the right side thinker, who's a little bit more emotional, won't come to the same decision as quickly because they're waiting to feel it. And it's no different as to when they're about to make the decision to leave the relationship. They're actually waiting for this feeling of going, I've got to go, or they're waiting for some sort of catalyst. So something that's going to happen and they're going to go, no, enough is enough. I'm not even worrying about what's going to happen from here. I'm just out of here. And they don't care about where they're going to live. They don't care that what's going to happen. Something's just going to blow up and they're going to go, right, I'm out of here. I'm moving in with my mum. I'm doing this, whatever the case may be. But they're going to think of the consequences after they've actually done the steps, where the left side thinker is going to be a little bit more planned and prepared. In some cases, they will stay a lot longer because they need to make sure that they have everything planned and ready. Now, if you're a touch of both, and that's where I sort of think I was, it was funny because I'd sort of started to think about the plan and what it was going to look like and where I was going to go and how I was going to survive. But then in saying that as well, there was just one incident that happened and that's enough. I've got to get out of here. So I had to listen to my body and to what it was telling me. And it was telling me that I had to move on because I was so unhappy. So there's a mixture of both. We can deal with either side of our brain to make the decisions. And without knowing you personally, what that does, if you're a left side thinker and you have to have a plan and have it out step by step, you need to go through, whether it be a spreadsheet and tick them all off and go, right, I've done all that. If you're thinking about when is the right time to leave and you don't know, you can sit there and you can start to go, right, I know I need to have somewhere to live, or I need to have the conversation with where we're going to live. But then if he doesn't want to leave or she doesn't want to leave, I need to have a plan B for where I'm going to go. How are we going to look after the children? What does that look like? Who's going to have the care of them? Are we going to share them 50-50? Who's going to pay the bills? What does that look like? Are you going to prepare a spreadsheet and hand that over? Sit down with your partner as you have the conversation about, look, I don't think the relationship's working. And you go over a spreadsheet and you both agree on it, and you take it from there. You've got to do whatever it is that's going to help you to take the steps to move on. With a right side thinker, they're not going to have that sort of thing. They're most likely going to come in and go, I've had enough of this. Either you're leaving or I'm leaving, and we'll sort the rest out later on. They're normally the people that will come back later on and go, oh, maybe I should have possibly thought about this a bit more. I should have done a little bit more of the consequences, thinking of the consequences and what were going to happen to the children, or who was going to pay the bills or whatever. But you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter which way you think about it. Ultimately, it will sort itself out in the wash. If you'd like to know more about this, I have actually got a free download with my podcast notes just on the difference between a left and right side thinker. Something else to be mindful of, and I get asked this question a lot, is people often think that when they get up the courage to actually have the conversation with their partner that their relationship is over, that they think that it's over from that moment that the words are spoken. Now, that in most cases is not the case. Normally what will happen is, if you're the person that's decided to leave the relationship and you're telling your spouse or partner this, they will want to have a conversation about what's gone wrong, what they can do to try harder, what it is that both of you can try and explore to maintain your relationship or improve it. Unfortunately, when there's no love left, that just sometimes isn't achievable. But if you're a compassionate person, you might think, well, I've got to give this one more go. I've got to make sure that I've done everything I possibly can so I could put my hand on my heart in years from now and say to those around me, and whether it be my children, I gave this 100%. I tried as hard as I possibly could. So don't think by getting up the courage today or tomorrow to have the conversation with your partner that it will all finish after that conversation, because it won't. It will be a phased approach. And what you'll find, the issues are that I'm not trying hard enough. Let me try and fix that problem. Let me try and do better. I'm even prepared to go and see someone. Can we go and see a counsellor? Sometimes you'll find that they'll want to debate with you, convince you that they can do better and they will try harder, because they're fighting for their future, and all of that is natural. The other thing you've got to realise too is that you've been the person that's been contemplating this for some period of time. You've been thinking about it, whether it be day and night, or been sitting at the kids swimming or driving back from football training, and you've been contemplating your unhappiness for quite a bit of time. So you are completely and utterly prepared to leave. You want a life, you want it to change straight away, where they're not in that same position. So if you really have decided that this is over and you want to leave as soon as you've had the talk to your spouse, then you need to put steps in place to do that. Otherwise, be prepared for it to be a conversation and, okay, you're not happy, let's try this, let's do that. Or it could be, let's sleep for a period of time in two separate beds just until we understand what the future looks like. I've even had clients that have put pillows down the centre of their bed, so at least they're not touching each other. So whatever makes it work for you, that's what you need to do. But as I said, most marriages just don't finish on the day that you actually have the talk. It needs to be a phased exit from the relationship, if that makes sense. Now, there are some cases where this approach doesn't work. And this sometimes happens when you have a partner who you know just will not accept this outcome. They are not interested whatsoever in taking any responsibility or blame for the failure of their relationship. And because of that, you know damn well that when you sit there and say, look, this is over, it's not working, I don't love you anymore, you don't love me, it's not a good environment for the children, they will just automatically put the blame back on you and say, this is all your fault, you're not pulling your weight, the reason it's not working is because you're not trying hard enough, whatever the case may be. So those of you who are in a relationship like that will completely understand what I'm saying. Now, those people sometimes have no choice but to completely have a executed plan in place before they leave. So what do I mean by that? We have had clients who have already gone and got a rental property, have actually put furniture in that rental property and started moving, some of their key assets out of their house, their clothes, some other important things that aren't going to be lost. And they set themselves up before they have the conversation because they know as soon as they have this chat with the other partner, it's not going to go well. They know that it's going to get very fiery and it's not going to be a good place to be. So they already have their plan set up, executed and ready to go. And the last part of the puzzle is actually having the conversation with their partner. Now, that's not something that I recommend everyone to do. You have to be in a very certain sort of situation to tackle it that way. But then you also need to show respect to your partner. And that might mean that you can just get a team of removalists in and have everything moved, and by the time they get home from work that night, there's nothing left in the house. You can do it that way, or you can get the rental property, you can go and purchase new your washing machine and fridge and set yourself up in the new property, and then go home, have the conversation with the person and say, look, I'm leaving, this isn't working, and all of the reasons why, and from tomorrow I won't be living here. Each and every person's circumstances are different, and you have to do what is right for you. You know your partner, your spouse better than anyone, and you know how they're going to react and how they're not going to react. So using that information and evidence that you have in hand, that's how you put together your plan to leave. So if you're unsure to even how to take the first steps or how to even address your situation, and this is a big problem that I've found for a lot of clients, is they know that they've got to do something, but they just didn't know what to do, how to do it, and what their priorities were. So we do a thing called a divorce roadmap session, and this divorce roadmap session is where we really put the strategy together around what it is that clients need to be aware of financially, emotionally, physically before they leave their relationship. And by doing that, it gives you a sense of certainty. So when you know that you've got a plan and you just need to go through and execute the plan and tick stuff off and go, right, I've done this bit, I've done this bit, I've done this bit, it sits a lot easier with you, and emotionally you feel a little bit stronger because you know that whilst you're living in this overwhelm at the moment, and in a lot of cases we stay in these relationships that we're not happy with because, let's be honest, it's the devil we know. Most of our growth happens when we step outside of our comfort zone, but we don't realize that until we've actually taken that step into discomfort. So in a lot of cases we just stay in this unhappiness thinking, well, this is what my life is meant to be, not knowing that taking the steps to improve your life could be the best thing that ever happened to you. At the moment, you're living in this toxic environment, and I used to explain it like I felt like I was swimming in Play-Doh. And if you've been a swimmer or if got children and know about Play-Doh, you're moving your arms, you're trying as hard as anything to just get moving and you're not going anywhere, and you might be just feel like you're moving a millimeter. You eventually get there, but you've got to start somewhere. So our divorce roadmap sessions have been critical to a lot of our clients who have wanted to leave for a very long period of time and just didn't know what to do. Some of the keys that you can get out of that sort of session, and it's something that you could sit down and do with your girlfriend or someone else, your mother, or it's asking questions along the lines of, what is it that you really want out of your life? What do you want to achieve that you are not achieving right now in your relationship? And why is it that you don't love the person, or do you still really love them? Because I'm such an advocate that if you love them, or there's a little bit of love, or your jelly bean jar is half full, make sure you go to some counselling. Do something about trying to repair the damage that has been done, because like I've said before, people leave marriages thinking that the grass is going to be greener on the other side, and it is not. It can be a struggle. It takes years to get your financial situation back on track. And if you're a female, especially here in Australia, females in their 40s and 50s, unfortunately, are the new homeless. And that's because of superannuation. And if they haven't worked for a long period of time, they just don't have the skills that their husbands have to be able to earn a big income and be able to support their children, because in most cases they are the primary carer of the children. And they can also be some of the reasons that we don't leave, for that exact reason there as well. So it could be just putting together a strategy around getting a new job and making sure that you can afford to survive when you make the decision. So it's you're thinking a long-term game. You're not just thinking 5 minutes down the track and going, yep, I'm completely unhappy, I'm out of this marriage, and I really don't care what happens after this, because you can't live like that. You have to have a plan. I'm such a big believer that you need a clear plan and strategy. And if you don't use a business like mine, you can sit down and just do it with a girlfriend, but you have to ask yourself some critical questions around what it is that you want to achieve and why your relationship isn't working. The other key thing about this is, don't think that by leaving everything will be easier. And what I mean by that is all of this could be your issue, not your partner's. And this is a pretty difficult thing for some people to understand, but maybe the issue is yours, not your partner's. What do I mean by that? Your unhappiness, especially in this day and age, might not be their fault. It could be your fault. So you want to make sure that the reasons that you are leaving are because the two of you together can no longer work. But going to see a psychologist or a counsellor before you leave and actually helping you make the decision, because it's such a critical decision. It's a lifelong decision that has ongoing effects for family members, extended family, children. You want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. So when do you know that your relationship is no longer working, and the signs to look out for? So look, there's so many different signs, but the 6 probably that I see as the main reasons are normally lack of affection. So if you find yourself feeling unloved because your partner is no longer affectionate with no emotional engagement, it's normally because they've withdrawn. Or it could be that you've withdrawn. And the instigator of most relationship breakups will always say, I fell out of love some time ago. So if your partner has disengaged emotionally from you, they probably don't feel love for you any longer. Or it could be the other way around. It could be you disengaging from your partner because you no longer feel love for them. So let's be honest, the minimum requirement for a successful relationship is emotional engagement and the willingness to discuss feelings and communicating at the highest level rather than just all of this white noise in the room. You know, this is how we develop knowledge about our partner's needs and wants, and emotional engagement is also how we maintain our intimacy. So making sure our partner's needs are met, including our own, are the minimum requirements or the minimum elements for an intimate relationship. And then we've got conflict resolution. So are you at the stage in your relationship where you no longer even give a shit about winning an argument? Like it's got to a stage where you don't even care anymore because you know it's not worth even bothering about. So you've given up. This shows that you're completely removed from the relationship and its ongoing health. Or, as suggested by the noted researcher John Gottman, a lack of communication is always what sinks a healthy marriage. So a lack of effective conflict resolution. Healthy arguing builds skills in communicating and shows a sign of respect for each other. So if you no longer are able to resolve differences without causing injury to your partner, then there's an issue, because we need to be able to either agree to disagree or we need to be able to get to the bottom of a problem. Because if you continue to just keep them down inside and not actually address what went wrong, then they just build up, and before you know it, you've built nothing but a whole lot of resentment against that person and you become withdrawn. Then we've got a lack of sex. So both men and women, as stated in the book Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, highlights a difference between the sexes. But when one partner no longer finds their spouse sexually attractive, then this can kill a relationship. You know, don't get me wrong. Lust at the start of a relationship is really important, but as the years go on, that lust dissipates, but over time we still need to find our partners sexually attractive, and sex both expresses and reinforces emotional bridge between the two. So when a couple hasn't had sex in a long period of time, it usually is a reliable indicator that the emotional disengagement is advancing steadily. It is yet another indicator that the partner, whichever one has fallen out of love, takes no pleasure in being with their spouse, and that bond is rapidly eroding, if not already in a terminal state. So then we've got increased focus outside of the marriage, and this is when you no longer feel like rushing home to see your partner is the most important thing, and something's changed. So there's an emptiness in your marriage and you find yourself either feeling lonely or you're bored. And many couples concentrate on bringing up their children and busy themselves with everything going on in their life and don't pour into themselves what is most important. So making sure that you have a date night or whatever the case may be, and you just become two separate people living under the same roof. From that, what we find is a lot of people start to have a midlife crisis. So that could be something like taking up a new sport. It could be something that, if joining a new community group, it could be going out, or just as simple as maybe doing more with the kids. So, if the kids are into some sort of sport, spending a lot more time at the club, whatever the case may be. For a woman, it could be just, doing a lot more shopping. Could just be walking around a shopping centre, but preferring to be alone than be at home. And then we have the greatest indicator, and that's pretty much preparing for a single life. And when couples are comfortable with each other, they sometimes let themselves go. We see it all the time, often commenting with our contentness as such. It's not uncommon for spouses who are initiating leaving a relationship to stop and consider their appearance. So in other words, they start to lose weight, they buy new clothes. For women, it might be underwear, and men, I suppose. You start to spend money on things like Botox, etc. And we've even heard of stories of men who all of a sudden are having hair transplants. And all of this is to increase what they see is their ability to start dating when their marriage is over. And particularly with women who have stayed at home, we often see a new interest in refreshing or acquiring a career. So they might want to go back to school, they might want to start, if they've been a stay-at-home mum, they might start looking for a part-time or full-time job. All of those things are indicators that they're starting to prepare for life as a single person. So there's so many more than these 6, but these are the 6 that I often see. So let's just recap. So number 1 was lack of affection. Number 2 was disengagement emotionally. Number 3, so no conflict resolution. Number 4, lack of sex. Number 5, increased focus outside of the marriage. And number 6 was preparing for a single life. So this is such a personal decision. No one can tell you what to do or when to do it, but you need to listen to your stomach. You'll need to listen to yourself. You need to know whether it's time to move on and whatever. We've talked about, counselling and making sure that you really do understand the consequences and why you need to make the decisions that you're making. We've spoken about how our brain works, and maybe there was insight there as to why it's taking you so long, but maybe, or hopefully, I've helped you by you now knowing, well, this is why I'm not putting those steps in place, because I really need to have a checklist, or I'm just waiting for that one catalyst for me to go, right, I'm out of here. But something that I often get my one-on-one students to do when they find themselves in this confusing situation is to get a piece of paper and put a line down the centre. And what I want you to do if you find yourself in this position is to put on one side of the paper stay and on the other side leave. Now, go down on each side and put why you think you should leave. Each and every reason you can come up with. And then on the stay, put the reasons that you should stay. Now, visually, you're going to sit there when you finish this exercise and you're going to look at it and you're going to be able to see that one side is going to be so much longer than the other. And if that's the case, when you look at it, you're going to have the answer to your question. Okay, I've got far more reasons to stay than I have to go. I've got far more reasons to go than I have to stay. Or you might find that it's 50-50. Now, when you do that exercise, then you're going to know if it's 50-50, right, we need to go off and either I need to do some counselling myself or my partner and I need to go and have some counselling, because obviously I'm feeling the way I do because there's some other things that are wrong with me. The other thing is, if you look at it and it's just completely every single reason is to go, your answer is right there in front of you. And I did this exercise myself when I was contemplating leaving my marriage. I remember sitting there and trying to come up with reasons to stay. I just was one after the other putting reasons to leave. And the reasons to stay, I need to get it out, but I think it was there was only about 4 or 5 reasons to stay. And there was, a full loose leaf page document as to why I needed to go. So when I looked at that, I knew my decision, I just made it, or it cemented my decision making, and then I just needed to go and start to put the steps in place to do what was right for me. And as I said, for me, it was just a catalyst over an argument that happened, and I just thought to myself, enough is enough. I can't do this anymore. I'm out of here. So hopefully this very first episode has helped any of you that are contemplating leaving and wondering what you need to do and when is the right time to leave. Hopefully I have given you a little bit of clarity on this, because no one can really answer that question for you. Whether you leave or you stay, if it's not meant to happen, you will eventually go at some time. But you've got to go when it is right for you, and you've got to worry about your little part of the world. And if your little part of the world is your children and some other things that are most key to you, you need to make sure that they are your priority in your decision making. So thank you for joining me. It's been really exciting. I'd love for you to leave a comment at the bottom of this. I have, as I said, got a download on how left side and right side thinkers make decisions, so that could help you. So please go to the show notes for more information, and I look forward to catching up with you again next week. So thanks everyone, and I'll talk to you again soon.